listener production.
Hey, Chris Spyrou with you. Happy Friday and welcome to The Briefing. Around 9 in 10 songs we stream in Australia are by artists from everywhere but here, which comes at a cost to our homegrown musos and music scene, but there's a pretty easy way you can change that.
I don't think the call to explore more Australian music should be done from a place of guilt or of like, it's your responsibility during wartime to listen. You know, I don't believe in like pressuring audiences and guilting them like that. I think it should be more about curiosity.
That deep dive into the Ausify Your Algo campaign and how you can get around it in seconds is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Friday, the 7th of November.
Hey Chris, and to you listening, an investigation has found real estate agents are using dodgy tactics on auction listings, which sees them underquote properties to try and attract more hopeful buyers.
Final call now, we are going, stop!
So if you're hoping for that to be you, well, this one is for you. Now, intentionally underquoting a property is illegal in Australia and agents can face serious penalties for it. However, a loophole in some states is basically allowing agents to select bogus comparable properties to justify providing a lower property quote than they know or intend it to sell for. For example, say you're a buyer, you get told, hey, they're looking for around the 800s, only to go to auction and the property goes for 1.2 mil, which is happening left, right and centre.
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating for buyers and it relies on, the desperation of people looking for a home thinking, oh God, is this actually what properties are going for? And people do get swept up in the heat of the moment at an auction specifically, not to mention having more people there to bid on a property also makes it appear more competitive too and can drive up sale prices. So there are different laws in various states and territories when it comes to this. For example, in Queensland, you're not meant to give a price guide for auction properties at all.
However, speaking from experience, I can confirm this still does happen. It just was said loosely and verbally.
Yeah, and meanwhile in New South Wales, agents are required to provide accurate estimates and not use misleading terms like offers over, etc. And in Victoria, agents have to give an indicative price which can't be less than the selling or rejected offer of the seller. And they also have to include 3 comparable recent sales to show it's accurate.
But this is where the dodgy stuff has been coming in, because in Victoria, some agents will deliberately choose comparable properties that aren't actually comparable. So say the age of the home might be completely different. One's modern, one's old, while some others deliberately exclude sales even in the same street just to be able to choose another inferior one. But no more, because this morning the Victorian government's released a statement saying it's cracking down on the loophole and strengthening its guidelines after more than 50% of homes in the state sold above the quoted maximum. So soon, agents will have to use the most appropriate comparable local properties to better determine a home's selling price. And now the pressure is mounting on other states and territories to follow suit, where this and other similar tactics are still being used.
Changing pace now, a male nurse in Queensland's been charged with raping 2 elderly female hospital patients. Police allege the 41-year-old assaulted the women, who were both in their 80s, between January 2020 and December last year at the Greenslopes Private Hospital in Brisbane. He's accused of raping the women while on duty.
According to a statement from Ramsay Healthcare, the man was stood down as a staff member just under a year ago and hasn't returned to work since. Now, following extensive investigations into the incident, police attended the man's outer Brisbane property on Wednesday, where he was arrested and charged. Police have described the alleged crimes as heinous and a reprehensible breach of trust.
They've also applauded the bravery of the women who came forward and have reassured other victim survivors that they're not alone and support is available. Authorities are calling on anyone who might have information relating to the investigation to reach out. Meanwhile, the 41-year-old nurse's matter was mentioned in court and he's due to reappear later this month.
Qantas says it's reviewing its rules for passengers carrying lithium batteries after a man caught fire when his power bank burst into flames, forcing about 150 travellers to evacuate one of its business lounges yesterday. Witnesses at Melbourne's International Airport say they heard screaming and saw battery acid flying everywhere after the man's portable charger overheated inside his pocket, causing his jacket to catch fire and the smell of smoke to fill the lounge. Now, it's understood the man in his 50s 50s sustained burns to his legs and fingers. He was treated by paramedics at the airport before being taken to hospital in a stable condition.
Qantas says it'll share an update soon on its review, and it's not the only airline rethinking its power bank policy in Australia. Virgin Australia is doing the same after a fire broke out in an overhead locker on a Sydney to Hobart flight back in July. And look, if Qantas or Virgin do end up banning or putting restrictions on the type of power banks you can have on their flights, it'll be joining a growing list of other airlines, including Emirates, Thai Airways, Air Busan and Singapore Airlines, who all have brought in rules this year after similar incidents on both domestic and international flights.
Now to the story that just keeps on giving, the Louvre heist. As if it wasn't bad enough that we got reports this week that the museum's CCTV security system password was literally Louvre. But now, a report's found its managers prioritised buying high-profile art over upgrading its security in the years leading up to the heist, which saw $157 million worth of crown jewels stolen. The report by France's highest auditor was conducted between 2018 and 2024, finding a plan to modernise its security tech had been on the cards for at least 5 years, but was rolled out slowly and kept being delayed, with money instead being sunk into improving visitor experiences.
Yes, the independent body says last month's heist was a deafening alarm bell and was made entirely possible by the museum's outdated security systems, not because of a lack of staff. Now, the Louvre has since responded, saying the report overlooked the impact of the pandemic and 2024 Paris Olympics, which they say, was the reason that they invested more in visitor experiences. Also noting that the theft happened just weeks before planned security upgrades were set to begin as part of its decade-long €800 million plan to revamp the museum's systems and experiences overall.
Yeah, and as to what's going on with the actual investigation, well, authorities say the jewels haven't been recovered, with the 4 suspects arrested last week facing preliminary charges of theft by an organised gang and criminal conspiracy.
And Nick Kyrgios reckons he could make a shock return to the Australian Open in January after revealing a possibly miraculous recovery to his career-threatening knee injury.
It's not swelling, it's not feeling bad after a session, so I don't know whether to call it a miracle or anything, but my knee has some, it feels like it's gotten younger by a couple of years.
What is going on in the background there? I'm sorry, very distracting.
Now, look, that audio is thanks to the Australian Associated Press, who were interviewing Kyrgios while he was at this event launch for this partnership that he has with the Greek restaurant chain called Zeus Greek Street. So that's what you're hearing there. You're hearing the sound of smashing plates. Look, Kyrgios says he's back to moving and sliding like he was in 2022, the same year he reached the Wimbledon men's final and actually won the doubles title at the Oz Open with Thanasi Kokkinakis.
Now, while he's got this new lease of life on the court, he's not promising fans an impressive display if he does play in the Grand Slam. And he also commented on his upcoming Battle of the Sexes showdown with Arina Sabalenka, whom he previously pretty much said he'd smash, saying he was now feeling the pressure to beat her after a playful war of words between the two. So definitely one to watch.
And look, before we wrap up headlines, here's a little something from Andre Bocelli.
Oh my God, I did not know this was coming, okay?
All right, listeners, to you listening, this is Tara Cassidy's final day on the briefing headlines. She has spent the last 9 months doing an incredible job covering for Sacha Barbagat, who is back from mat leave on Monday. Now, Tara, I can safely say you are one of the hardest working and most thorough journalists I have ever worked with. And I'm actually really going to miss working with you each and every morning, but I know you are going to love deleting those silly alarms that wake you up before the sun.
1:45. Yes. 1:45 a.m. Wow.
Curse you, daylight savings. What can you tell us about what's next, Tara? I know we've got some secrets we keep in the works.
Look, I honestly am not sure about what's next. Yes, you're right. I have an episode coming up with Secrets We Keep Uncovered next week, which if you're not already listening to, you should, by the way, another great listener podcast series. But other than that, I'm not sure. Maybe just, enjoy the sleeping for a bit, relax with the dogs, or maybe another podcast investigation if I'm lucky. So you just have to wait and see. But yeah, you'll be in safe hands. Sacha Barbagat back in the seat on Monday.
Yes, and I don't know if our listeners know know this about you, but Tara is actually an award-winning podcaster.
Oh my God, stop.
Okay, so just bear that in mind and go and follow her and just check out everything that she has coming up whenever it does come up.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, look, that is it for our headlines for today. And this is our last headline, Sarah. Coming up next is my deep dive on the new Aussie music campaign to support more local artists and how you can get more of it in your feeds. Have a listen to that deep dive. It's coming up for you next. We talk a lot about the algorithm, the invisible puppet master that's constantly shape-shifting to keep us hooked on our screens and trapped watching and listening to what it thinks we like. But what we don't talk about a lot is how it's drowning out Australian voices.
Now you see me.
Now you don't.
Hate that.
Now, while it's often spoken about in the singular, the algorithm is the coding behind most of the apps and sites we use that's tracking everything we tap, pause and skip to customize our scrolls on everything from Instagram and TikTok to Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and even Netflix. And while we might not know the exact formula behind each of these codes, we do know they can be hacked.
You can defy the feed with local sounds.
Ausify Your Algo.
Our future's in your search history.
That's the heartbeat of a campaign fronted by Aussie musos, including Kelly Holiday, Thelma Plum, G Flip, Shannon Knoll, and Ben Lee, who joins me now. Ben, welcome to the briefing. How exactly did the Ausify Your Algo campaign come about?
Well, it was something I was invited to participate in, and I was really excited as I think that, I'm a huge fan of streaming culture and all of the opportunities as a music fan to have access to this music from all the world around the world and just have this endless stream of music coming at us. But I'm also a big fan of sort of conscious consumption. And I really liked the idea of encouraging people to get a little bit more proactive in terms of how they interact with their algorithms.
Now, the campaign line is that you can defy the feed with local sounds by Ausifying your algorithm. How does one Ausify their algorithm?
Yeah, well, it's based on a really simple idea, which is that, algorithms they're impersonal, they're amoral, they basically are trying to give you more of what you want. And if you're a passive consumer of music, it's just going to do its best guess and serve you stuff that's blowing up all around the world for people your age or whatever. But if you start even just searching and giving it some data, saying, I actually like Australian music, or better yet, I like new Australian music, it will then do its best to meet you there in the future and serve you up more Australian music and new Australian music. So it's really just about giving it the data to work with it in a way that's going to work for you.
Part of this campaign, what's driving this campaign is the fact that less than 10% of songs streamed in Australia are created by local artists. But it feels like the algorithm isn't the only thing at the moment that's threatening Australian musos and Australian music. There's also the very real threat of AI-generated music. I mean, I've kind of been working with AI-generated music for a little while now, and what was once incredibly cheesy and incredibly bad is now quite good. What's the game plan when it comes to AI-generated music like this?
There's obviously legislative questions to do with compensation and all that sort of stuff, that it's training models, which is a larger legal issue. That's not something I'm particularly well versed in or informed in. From a creative standpoint, I'm not a Luddite. I always embrace new tools, and, it's like sampling in hip hop. When that was a big conversation, I was not against it in principle. I do think that you do want people to be compensated for their intellectual property that they own. And as far as how we move forward creatively, I just think living in a culture where we emphasize that creativity is valuable and that unique viewpoints are valuable, that becomes the kind of culture where it's not as tempting to buy replicas of things just because they look or sound like something that could be real. But we're actually interested in humanity and what humanity has to say. And then, look, if you're using AI, that can be another tool, another sort of quiver in your, whatever you call it, whatever that term is, in your sack of arrows. I don't know, I fumbled the ball there. But you know what I mean? I think the emphasis should be on artists continuing to think creatively, the systems being as fair as possible, and just putting the influence on new ideas and great, innovative, creative thinkers.
I mean, the context behind this is I am a massive Eurovision fan, huge Eurovision fan, and Spotify.
I'm really sorry about that. That's a hard burden to carry. I'm sorry. And how did you tell your parents?
I know, I'm a local hero. I'm pretty much a local hero. They write about me in the papers often. But Spotify knows that about me. But Spotify fed me the other day in my Discovery playlist this song that I was listening to, and I was like, oh, whoa, this sounds exactly like Eurovision. I clicked on it, and it's AI Vision. It's this whole song contest that's been artificially developed by, I'm assuming, a superfan, and they've created songs that sound exactly like the countries that they're saying they're from. So the one I was listening to is the one from Greece.
In the shadows I was hiding, lost in endless blue, but the stars inside me guided, led me back to truth.
It was spectacular. It sounded exactly like the last 20 years of what Greece has delivered with Eurovision. It sounds like one of the top 40 artists at the moment in the country. And I added it to my playlist. But in the concept that you're talking about, this idea of conscious consumption, is the call for Australians to not do that, to not engage with AI-generated music like that?
I just don't think making rules for audiences ever really gets you much success. I mean, I think a better tack is encouraging curiosity of like, my question for you about that song would be, what did you learn about Greece or Greek people by listening to that song? Probably not that much. You know what I mean? And I think that's where art ties into actual human curiosity, I think, is where we find more conscious consumption. I don't think the call to explore more Australian music should be done from a place of guilt or of like, it's your responsibility during wartime to listen. You know, I don't believe in like pressuring audiences and guilting them like that. I think it should be more about curiosity. Like, we want to live in a culturally rich atmosphere where young people see a plethora of options for their creative expression and go out and see bands or artists because they want to hear their stories told. You know what I mean? So I think coming at it from a place of going, what kind of society, what kind of culture do we want to live in? We want to support our artists for that reason because they make that society happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll bring it back to the Ausify Your Algo campaign. For anyone listening who does want to get involved in it, where's the first place that they should start?
I mean, literally, there could not be a simpler call to action than get on your streaming service, whatever that is, and search up a couple Australian artists. Add them to a playlist, or just even play them. Literally, by playing a few tracks, you are giving data to a streaming service, which it's going to decide then what to serve you next. Maybe hyperlink around a little bit. You know what I mean? If you like, I actually like some of the streaming services have that like radio service based on a selection. So if you pick a few Aussie artists you like, new or old, go to their radio selection or their shuffle and see where it links to. It's just about like kind of getting involved and like being on a bit of an exploratory journey. And it's really fun.
And I mean, another aspect to this is the website and the Spotify pages that they've got. If you just search Ausify, it'll come up. Something that kind of blew me away, and I feel really bad that it blew me away, is I didn't realize that we had such a cross-section of genres being made by Australian musos. I didn't realize that there was Latin pop and there was all this other stuff that you can actually listen to, and it's all offered on that website.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting challenges is that streaming has actually allowed Australian music to become more global too. You know what I mean? So there are people who are discovering Australian music all over the world, and like it's all becoming part of this massive melting pot. And that's great. But we also want a local scene with like, you know, where those artists can be supported within their country and within their community so we don't lose all of them too. So yeah, there's so much. It's unbelievable. And there's also like all these young people growing up now who never felt any aesthetic or like, you know, any limitations because they grew up on streaming. And so for them, like the world's their oyster. They can just do anything. And I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, the subtle nods on the website as well. It's kind of like early day LimeWire where you had to just dig and find the track that you wanted. But this time, you actually get to listen to the song that you intended to listen to, not some other sounds that are not safe for listening or mentioning on the Briefing podcast at all. Ben, before we let you go, I do want to ask you, what are the plans moving forward with this campaign? It's being referred to as the inaugural Ausify campaign. What can you tell us about any plans moving forward?
Well, I think when you look at any type of awareness campaign that seeks to change behavior, the ultimate goal is that it gets embedded within culture in a way that awareness is always present. Like, it's funny when you think about like Oz T-shirt month and all these types of things. They're great to like light a little spark, but the goal of it is that this should be like a year-round adventure. So yeah, I think the plan is to just continue it until we get the message like really embedded that like we can have our own vibrant music industry in Australia with Australian artists, as well as enjoying everything from around the world.
Ben Lee, thanks for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks, mate.
That was Ben Lee speaking with me there. And if you want to get around this campaign, it is, after all, Oz Music Month. Search up ausify.com.au or head to their Instagram at ausifyau. And if you do go to the website, actually hit us up with a DM. I had heaps of fun there. I actually spent a solid hour yesterday just having a little play around and seeing all the different features. It is very, very cool. Do get in touch with us at The Briefing Podcast on Instagram if you do that. All right, that is it for this episode of The Briefing. I'm Chris Spyrou. I'll catch you next time.